You say sorry before you speak, even when no one has asked you to. You say sorry before you breathe too loud or take up space. You apologize for interrupting, even when you didn't. You apologize for needing something, even when it's basic. You apologize for emotions you never chose. You say sorry when you're tired, when you're honest. When you're overwhelmed by things that others seem to handle without hesitation or shame. You say sorry when you speak too fast, or too slow, or not at all. You say sorry when you're in pain, and when you try to explain it. You say sorry when you laugh too loudly, when you cry too suddenly, when your presence feels like something that needs to be earned, not just allowed. You've been taught to believe your existence is an inconvenience, that your feelings are too much, that your truth should only be shared if it's polished. You learn to shrink before anyone asked. You learn to soften your edges before anyone felt them. You learn to disappear before anyone noticed you were there. But let this be the truth you were never told. You don't have to apologize for being. You don't have to shrink in order to be safe. You are not too much. You are not a mistake. You are not the sum of other people's discomfort projected onto your light. You were never a burden. You were never unworthy. You just believed you were because the world didn't know what to do with your softness. You apologize when someone bumps into you, even though it wasn't your fault. You instinctively take the blame before fully understanding what just happened. You say sorry before asking a question, as if your curiosity is an inconvenience, and your voice might disrupt something more important than your need. You feel the urge to justify your feelings even before you express them. You soften your words, edit your tone, shrink your needs to sound acceptable. You preface your opinions with, "This might be stupid," or "Sorry if this doesn't make sense," even though your insight is valid, clear, and necessary. You avoid sharing joy too loudly because you fear it might take up too much room. You dim your happiness in case someone else finds it uncomfortable. You feel guilty for resting. You feel like you have to earn your peace. You only allow stillness after exhaustion has completely emptied you out. You constantly check people's reactions for signs of disapproval. A sigh, a delayed response, a glance. You read these moments as reasons to apologize. You overthink your presence in every room. You question whether you're welcome, whether you're annoying, whether you're being too much just by showing up. You feel like you have to explain your boundaries instead of simply stating them. You over-explain your absence, your silence, your no. You apologize when you cry, when your voice shakes, when your emotions leak out where someone might see them and not know what to do. You avoid confrontation not because you're passive, but because you've learned that your discomfort is easier to carry than someone else's reaction. You often say things like, "Sorry, I'm emotional," or "Sorry, I care too much," even though those are signs of depth, not flaws that need fixing. You downplay your dreams. You make them sound smaller. You act like you're not serious, just in case they don't believe you deserve to want that much. You stay quiet in rooms where you're qualified to speak. You question your expertise. You swallow your truth because you fear sounding arrogant. You hesitate before asking for help, not because you're fine, but because you don't want to be a burden to someone who might already be tired. You replay conversations wondering if you said too much. You edit yourself after the moment has passed. You apologize in your mind long after others forget. You feel pressure to always be easy. Easy to love. Easy to work with. Easy to understand. You apologize for every moment you are not. You try to disappear emotionally before someone pushes you away. You detach to protect yourself. You apologize by leaving before they ask you to. You attach your value to how little you need.
How much you can endure.
How quietly you can survive in spaces that never made room for your pain. And when someone finally tells you that you don't have to say sorry, you flinch a little, because it feels strange to exist without apology. Because somewhere along the way, the world taught you that your softness was a liability, that your honesty needed to be hidden to stay safe. You were praised for being agreeable, for staying quiet, for not asking for too much. You were loved more when you were easy to handle. You noticed how people pulled away when you got emotional, how silence followed your truth, how love felt conditional the moment you stopped performing. You watched others get attention for being loud, while you were told to be polite, to wait your turn, to not make things harder than they already were. You learned that approval often came at the cost of authenticity, that being chosen sometimes meant abandoning the parts of you that felt inconvenient. You learned to monitor your impact on a room. You became skilled at shrinking just enough to be tolerated, but never too much to be erased. You found safety in being invisible. You equated being unnoticed with being accepted. because at least no one was upset by your presence. You grew up around people who avoided discomfort, so you became the one who absorbed it, the one who made it easier for others to stay unbothered. You thought you had to earn your place by being less emotional, less opinionated, less loud, less real, until your less became too familiar. You were never directly told you were too much. But every flinch, every sigh, every withdrawn glance whispered it louder than words could say. You began apologizing not just for what you did, but for who you were, for the way your emotions lingered longer than others could handle. You began thinking that love was something fragile, something you had to tiptoe around, something that might leave if you dared to be whole. You noticed how being easy to love meant not asking for anything, so you gave yourself less and called it maturity, when really it was fear. You shaped yourself to fit into roles that didn't belong to you. You adjusted your volume, your vulnerability, your vision, just to feel accepted. You were taught that survival meant being liked, that being too honest was dangerous, that feelings are best kept private so they can't be used against you. You thought that keeping the peace was more important than keeping yourself. The comfort in others was worth the discomfort in your own chest. You labeled your needs as dramatic, your intuition as overthinking, your desire to feel safe as being too sensitive. You internalized their discomfort as your shame. You learned to ask for less because asking for more made people leave. You mistook their distance for proof that you were defective. You told yourself you were strong because you didn't cry, because you didn't speak up, because you could disappear quietly and still show up smiling. But you are not strong because you hide. You are strong because you feel. And you don't need to apologize for that ever again. You begin by noticing every time you want to say sorry for something that doesn't need apology. Then you pause and breathe before letting it escape. You ask yourself if what you're about to apologize for is actually wrong or just human. If it's just you being honest, soft, or real, you start replacing "I'm sorry" with "thank you." Thank you for waiting. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here while I find my words. You begin to honor the space you take up, not as something you need permission for, but as something that already belongs to you. You stop editing your voice just to be digestible. You speak from your truth, knowing not everyone has to agree for it to be valid. You soften into your needs instead of shrinking away from them. You let hunger be hunger, let rest be necessary, let silence be sacred. You remind yourself that having emotions is not a crime, that tears don't require permission, that feeling deeply is a sign of life, not weakness. You start noticing the places you overperform just to be liked. Then you practice stillness there.
I love you.
You let yourself be enough without proving it. You say no without explanation. You hold boundaries without guilt. You let yourself walk away from what drains you, even if no one understands. You stop over-explaining your worth to people who can't hold it. You realize that convincing is not connection. Visibility is not always safety. You let your body relax in rooms where it once tensed up. You notice where you clench, where you hide, where you start apologizing without speaking. You give yourself grace when the urge to shrink returns. You recognize it as a reflex, not a truth. You don't judge yourself for forgetting. You stop chasing people who only value your quiet version. Start choosing spaces where your full self is not just tolerated, but welcomed. You replace perfection with presence. You stop performing in relationships. You let love be mutual or let it go. You stop begging to be understood. You tell yourself the truth, even when it's hard. I deserve to feel seen. I am allowed to need. I don't have to be sorry for showing up fully. You treat your softness like sacred ground. You stop letting the world define your sensitivity as fragility. You claim it as your strength. You allow your dreams to be big. You stop shrinking your wants. You speak them out loud like they matter because they do, because you do. You give your younger self the apology the world never gave. And then you promise them this: we will not keep apologizing to survive. You look in the mirror and say, I'm not here to be small. I'm not here to be easy. I'm here to be whole. And I'm done apologizing for it. And with time, apology turns into presence. Presence into power. And power into peace. The kind that doesn't beg to exist, but simply does. You were not born to beg for belonging. You were not born to say sorry for taking up air, for having needs, or for simply existing. You do not owe the world your silence just to keep it comfortable. You do not have to apologize for the way your feelings show up. You are not made to be small. Just because others are afraid of your presence. You were made to exist fully, gently, without having to explain it. Let today be the moment you stop shrinking. Let this be the breath where you release the idea that worth is something you earn through quietness. You are allowed to feel deeply, to speak openly, to take up space without performing for permission or waiting to be invited into your own life. You are not too loud. You are not too emotional. You are not too sensitive. You are simply human in a world that forgot how to hold softness. And if you needed someone to tell you this, here it is. You don't have to be sorry for being who you are, when who you are is honest. So if this spoke to you, whisper it back to yourself. Say it out loud or write it down. I am not sorry for existing anymore. Then go one step further. Leave a comment with the word enough. Let that be your stand. Let that be your beginning. Let that be your return. Subscribe to The Meaning if you're done shrinking, if you're ready to heal, if you're ready to stop apologizing and start coming home to yourself.